Welcome everybody. This is special Zoom cast version of the Mandem Show. It's your boy Vegas,
Your boy Gutsy.
and you are locked in with the Mandem. Today we have a very special guest. One of our first real, I guess, career people. You know what I'm saying? One of our first career people on the show. We have lawyer Jordana Goldlist. Welcome to the show, Jordana.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you for having me. Your first real career person.
Yeah, someone that's in the field of, you know what I'm saying, just being a career person. It's
Got
really
it.
nice. It's really nice. Mental health check. How have you been? How is life? How are you feeling?
Life is good. I'm feeling good. Work is busy. I just launched a new podcast myself, so that's been keeping me a little bit busy and on my feet for the last few weeks. So it's all good. How are you guys?
We're great. I can't complain. Well, what's your podcast on, if you don't mind me asking?
It's called Who Judges the Judge. It is an extension of my TED Talk that I launched in 2018. It's all about having people question the way they judge the world around them. And so, after spending many years involved with people in the criminal justice system, from all sides of the system, I think that it's so easy to judge people on the worst mistake they made on the worst day of their life, and we don't take the time, especially in this era of fast answers and social media, to actually try to understand who someone is as opposed to just what they have done or what they're currently doing. And
Mm,
so trying to peel back the layers of that judgment and expose someone's, true self.
nice.
It's dope.
Thanks.
That's dope. And to clarify, you're a criminal defense lawyer.
Correct.
Nice. Where could people watch that podcast that you have?
So the podcast is on Apple and Spotify. It's also going to be, as of this week, available on my website. We're updating the website right now, which is jhgcriminallaw.com, and the TED Talk's available on YouTube.
And it's just audio. It's an audio. It's not a video.
That's correct. For now, it's audio. We wanted to
Okay.
get started with the audio, and we'll sort of see how things progress. We've recorded the first 7 episodes, and we're rolling them out bi-weekly.
Nice.
Thank
Were
you.
you, were you born and raised in Toronto?
Born and raised. Yes, sir.
Oh, nice.
Which
Nice.
part? Which part of Toronto though? Like Toronto's big. Which part? Which part?
Toronto is big. So when I was born, my parents lived in an apartment at Bayview and Finch. They then moved to a house in Thornhill, Bathurst and Steeles. They split, and I stayed with my mom there for a few years, and then we moved to Richmond Hill. I moved downtown when I was 14, the day after I turned 14, and then I was sort of back and forth between Richmond Hill and downtown basically for most of my life, and I've now been in and around downtown for the last 15 years.
So I'm
So you,
assuming. Oh, go ahead, Gussie. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say her time in Thornhill, she never passed by Champagne Poppy, Mr. Drake.
I think he was more Forest Hill. He was a little
Oh
bit,
yes, it's Forest Hill.
yes, he was in even a nicer hood than I was, that's for sure.
So I guess I'm assuming your parents they split, divorced, separated.
They separated when I was 2, divorced when I was 5.
So you're pretty young. Did you feel like that had an effect on the way how you were raised?
Oh, certainly, especially their divorce.
How so?
It was very tumultuous. It was one of those angry, miserable divorces, and I was an only child and basically the weapon between the two of them. So each of them would try to use me to get back at the other, and that went on for many years. And because I was so young and so impressionable, I still don't know a lot of the truth about why they split or what my history is, or there's big questions because I was raised with 2 different narratives.
Do you ever feel like one day you're gonna want to find the answers, or do you feel like, you know what, I'm older, I don't care, I have my own life, you know?
I mean, I'll never know what the truth is. My mom always had one version, my dad had another. I haven't talked to my dad in over 13 years now, and my mom passed away 3.5 years ago. So neither one will ever admit that. And I don't know that either of them was necessarily lying. I think they both just had totally different interpretations of what was happening. So I don't think that it's a matter of one of them confessing, like, oh, I had this completely different narrative that I created and was trying to hurt you with. they just saw things so totally different. But I think that also helped inform me about other people's narratives, and I carried that, with me into my career. Like, just because a witness is truly believes in the version of events that they claim to remember, it doesn't mean it's necessarily so. It's just their interpretation of that situation.
That's very true. Very true.
Condolences, by the way, anymore.
Yes.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I wanted to get into it, how she became a criminal justice lawyer, you know?
So where did like the impetus for that desire start?
Yeah. Like,
Right back to the
were you
beginning.
watching like Law and Order or something? It was a TV show, or it was just, maybe a friend that got themselves in trouble, and you're like, man, I want to grow up and help others. Like,
Sort of. So it was actually a family member who got arrested when I was 7 or 8 years old. And I watched them going through the system, and I watched how important the lawyer became. I didn't even know what a lawyer did. I didn't understand the role. I didn't understand like what it meant in terms of keeping social order. I never understood it in terms of keeping the police in check until much later, probably into my teens, when I saw the power of the police and the way they can abuse that power if left unchecked. But as a little kid, it was, every time the lawyer called our house, like everybody stopped everything. It was like, oh, the lawyer's on the phone, the lawyer's on the phone. And if there was a meeting with the lawyer, like that took precedence over everything. And so I wanted that. I just wanted to be that important in someone else's family. I wanted to be that meaningful. And the praise with which that lawyer was bestowed amongst my family was really important. They were given such a high honor, such a level of respect without any understanding of what they did. And that for me became really important as I was growing up. And then I hit my teens and struggled a lot in my teens, drug abuse, acting out, truancy, things of that nature. And so then the role of the police sort of amongst like marginalized, disenfranchised youth sort of changed the way that I saw the notion of justice and what the justice system means. And so sort of pushing back against that. And I guess both of those experiences really converged in my early 20s. I was like, I don't know what else I really want to do. There was a part of me that wanted to go into journalism, a part of me toyed with the idea of staying in academia, but this idea of being a lawyer had, taken hold at such a young age, and it really, I never let it go.
And who further pushed you to be like, you know what, maybe this is the right path?
I don't think anybody pushed me. I mean, my family would always talk about how, if I became a lawyer, it would make them so proud. It was sort of, they knew that. My mom, certainly wanted me to go into law, but she would have been just as happy with me in academia, just as happy with me, in journalism. Once I got out of my teens and, left rehab for the fifth time successfully, finally, and, kicked this horrible addiction, went back to school. As long as I was sort of involved in something as a law-abiding citizen and earning a respectable living, my family would have been proud of me. Law seemed completely out of the realm of possibilities by the time I was applying. I applied just because I thought if I didn't try, I would always regret it. I would always look back and say, like, wow, I wonder if I could have done that. And I never even up till today, and it's been, 20 years since I started law school. I never want to look back and think, fuck, I should have done that. I should have tried, because the worst thing that can happen is you fail, but at least you knew you put in that
you try,
effort,
yeah.
right? And if you don't try, you've always got that like what if. And I never wanted to go through life with like that what if.
So
What was the hardest part of going through law school?
I think for me, because I didn't share the same upbringing and background as I thought everyone else around me had. And I've since learned that not everybody had that, elite private school educated history. I thought everyone was coming up from a family of like lawyers and doctors and politicians, and I didn't have that. I came from a broken home. I still was probably coming from a place of greater disadvantage than most. I was a high school dropout. I'd been arrested twice before I turned 18 years old. Like, I went through the trenches of street life and came out of that before I had graduated high school, which,
Wow.
I looked around my first year of class in law school and was like, nobody would understand where I'm coming from. Nobody would have that struggle. And then I became fearful of getting to know people in case any of that slipped out. And I was like, I don't want to end my career before it begins. If someone knows that I'm this like ex junkie, I don't want that tainting what I'm about to try to do with myself. So for
Mm,
me, I think the hardest part was like navigating the obstacles that I probably created for myself in a lot of ways by thinking that this was going to be a problem.
mhm.
I'll never know, but I think that for me was the hardest, was just like navigating socially. So I kept myself away and I tried to forge relationships with people, but only to a point, right? I felt like I was going to create a ceiling on what anyone got to know about me.
That's dope.
Yeah, that's dope.
Dope. Well, from what we know you from, you had a pretty big dealing with one of our famous or most popular blogs out here, Keep Six Solid. I know you can't speak on the actual case and what happened, but are you seeing a lot more cases involving like social media, Instagram? Are those cases becoming more popular now?
So it's interesting. Those cases, and that was like an anomaly. The he faced three cases. Two of them related to posts that he had put up, and the argument was always like he's operating like a news source, right? He's not he hasn't done anything illegal in reproducing what others have done or speaking about what other people are doing. And so I think that that stands as an anomaly in Canada. I don't know of any other case in which someone has been arrested for essentially disseminating news and sharing what's happening in another person's court case. So
Mm,
that I haven't seen since. Thank God, because we need, people to be able to share what is happening, in the world and in certain sectors and certain communities in a way that provides that information to their viewers. What we are seeing a lot of is the police using social media to try to find people, locate people, monitor people. And I share that a lot in the videos that I put on social media because people don't realize, when they're posing with their guns, when they're posing with their stacks of money, when they're posing with their jewelry, the police are able to access those pictures and they're seeing it and they're downloading it and they're using that against people. So, for example, robbery of a jewelry store, the guys come in and they're wearing big chains that are, custom made designs. The police are scouring different, pages on Instagram and on TikTok to try to figure out whose chain that is. And if it's a custom piece and it's a one of one, or there's only two or three and they're all, the same sort of group that are also wearing those chains in their hip hop videos and posting those on YouTube, the police are using all of that information, all those images to figure out who that person is that committed the robbery. So that I'm seeing on many, many cases. Instagram posts and YouTube videos are really becoming a source of identification for the police and for the courts.
is there a safe social media platform? Because we see all these guys like talk about Telegram and Snapchat, and like the police can't get your messages or videos from there. Is that even true? Because I feel like any platform that police want to get information from, they can get it from.
They can. It's more of a question of the technology. So what a lot of us don't realize is that, let's say you and I have a conversation on WhatsApp and we don't have our settings so that the app actually deletes the conversation. So the conversation
Mm,
sits in our phone. You could delete that conversation so that you can't access it on the app, but your actual phone's hard drive saves that conversation in its data until the capacity exceeds and the phone itself decides to write
wipe it.
over that conversation of which you have no control. So, if I get arrested tomorrow and the police seize my phone and they get a warrant and they extract all of the data, conversations that I may have deleted that I no longer have access to as the phone's user still exist in the background. And so the extraction report may still contain that conversation you and I had in which, for example, I'm sending photographs of firearms that you're looking to purchase. And so
Yeah,
now that conversation is being used against me because I'm clearly holding out guns for sale. Obviously, that's not happening, but as
yeah.
an example of what I've seen. And so I've had clients come to me and like, Miss, I deleted that conversation. I don't know how it can possibly be on my phone. And it's like, yeah, you deleted it from the app you were using, but it actually sits saved in the background of your phone until the phone itself decides to rewrite over it.
Well, yeah, it's like history, you know what I'm saying? And if you don't clear a cache, then you're pretty much
Yeah.
sealed. You're pretty much sealed,
Yeah.
you know?
So the police have access to web searches. They have access, obviously, to like emails, but I've seen WhatsApp, I've seen Signal. They can even retrieve voice notes that are sent over apps. So I had a case many years ago. I had a murder case in which my client and one of the co-accused were conversing about a hired hit using voice notes sent back and forth over an app. I can't remember if it was Signal or WhatsApp. And they had thought they were deleting all of these messages, and it all sat in the back of their phone. So the police retrieved it.
Wow.
Yeah, bro.
It's actually interesting because I don't know if you're seeing in the news right now, Little Dirk is kind of going through somewhat of the same thing. They've charged him, or I believe, with a murder for hire.
Yes.
We were speaking about it on our podcast yesterday, and I was thinking at some point, because they're saying he called the gang or the label OTF. Would a label that's OTF is under get sued if, like, you know what I'm saying, if they're funding these guys to allegedly do murder for hires and other crimes? Do you think at some point in time, like, these labels might start getting involved in getting sued or
Or
getting
found
arrested?
liable, or found
Yeah,
liable.
liable, more liable for these.
I mean, the victims could try to sue the record label if the record label itself was somehow contributing to any of the murders that were going on, right? It would be the victim's family, as opposed to, like, the police don't sue people. The police would charge. So the police have charged him
Mhm.
apparently on his way to Europe. He had booked a couple of flights domestically, and then was trying to take a private jet out, I think, to Dubai, and then over to Europe. But yeah, if he was trying to use the record label in order to facilitate, and the record label knew or ought to have known, then they were potentially liable. I think that's a hard sell. I think that unless the corporation was directly involved,
Mm,
so, for example, if corporate funds were being used to pay for the people who were actually committing these murders, that's a potential liability. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure enough about the case to know whether or not that will actually happen. I think we may see that with Diddy's case as well, right? If it turns out that he's using his record label as a way to facilitate sex trafficking, there's already I think the last check was like 150 lawsuits out of New York for women
jeez.
who were suing him for sexual assault. If he tries to hide behind his record label or any other corporate entity, and the corporation could somehow be connected to that, then there's a potential lawsuit. I think it's a stretch, but certainly it's not outside the realm of possibility. And I think in today's sort of society of suing people for any wrongdoing, especially if the person doesn't have the funds to support a lawsuit, they automatically will go after any corporate structure they can.
Let's stick right there on this sex trafficking thing, because we're seeing like a lot more eyes opening, and not just in New York, but also in the city as well, where a lot of trafficking charges and stuff of that nature is happening. Is there some sort of thing that's happening in the background that's trying to stop all that? Like, are there more cases being brought? Like, do you see it in your court, or whatever the case may be? Like, is there some sort of like directive to like stop human trafficking in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, there was a shift from around 2012. So previously, like way back, it was a prostitutes who were alleged to be committing the crime, right? And so the illegality around prostitution was actually placed on the sex worker. And so they would be charged with communicating for the purpose of sexual services. That was the crime. That the purchaser, right? The trick wasn't the person who was committing a crime. Obviously, if a woman was being forced, or they were working out of a brothel, it was considered a common body house, and that was illegal, and whoever was running it could be charged. And in 2012, there was a major case that was brought as a constitutional challenge to the way that these cases were being litigated, and it changed the entire landscape around sex work. And so then it became illegal for men, mostly, to be purchasing sex as opposed to women selling sex. And it just changed the landscape considerably in the sense of it became women being oppressed by the sex industry as opposed to this previous notion of, them not necessarily being the victims. And as soon as that sort of discussion changed to the victimization of women generally, coming from this notion, I think, of women traditionally being oppressed within society and within the workforce and needing to resort to these types of labor in order to support themselves, and also the demographic of women involved in sex work. Initially, this is of course before OnlyFans, before all of the internet work. Some of us can argue now that they're the last ones that are oppressed in this entire regime when they're making millions.
Millions.
Women are coming on and talking about making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. So to suggest that there's that same power balance, I think, is sort of mistaken or misplaced in today's world. But when you think about how it was traditionally, it was women who were poor, women who were racialized, women who were coming from situations of extreme disadvantage that were really putting themselves in situations where they were getting hurt, right? Before the internet, they were on the streets, and then shortly thereafter, they were still, putting themselves in positions where they were being taken advantage of and being harmed. And so once it was looked at, instead of being a vice, but a victimization, it really changed the way that police were working with sex workers. And they started becoming a little bit more compassionate. And so instead of treating them like they were criminals, they were being treated as victims. And that's the landscape in which sort of sex trafficking is being prosecuted today. There's dedicated teams of sex trafficking police, sex trafficking prosecutors. I can tell you in Toronto and throughout the GTA, there are teams who do nothing else. There's prosecutors that's all they do. They deal with sex trafficking, and same with police, and they're trained in this regard. So yeah, as a result, the fallout has been increased criminal charges against mostly men. There are some women, but mostly men who are said to be trafficking women. The problem is the net was cast so wide that women who just want the protection of a man so that they feel like they can safely work in the industry, some of those men are getting caught. And so sometimes it can be as simple as, giving a friend a ride and taking money for that ride because you still have to pay for gas and wear and tear on the car. That can be seen as being criminal now.
Like it could be seen as trafficking.
It is. It's
Yeah.
funny that she says that because
Yeah.
that's actually what I got charged with. Like
Was
the
it?
exact same thing that you're saying. A few years ago, I had a friend of mine, or not a friend, but somebody I knew. She charged me with the same thing. And when the jury came in and they asked, well, hey, if he drove her around, is that technically human trafficking? And the judge said yes. And me and my lawyer looked at each other and it was just like, well, not really if she had like control of everything. Like if he didn't control her and she said that, then it shouldn't be. But just like you're saying now, just as something as simple as if you drive her around or somebody around, it's considered human trafficking.
And the crazy thing is there's a clause in the criminal code that says a woman cannot consent to being trafficked. So even if a woman wants to be working in the industry and wants a guy to help transport her, because transporting is considered trafficking, from, let's say I'm a working girl, I'm in Toronto, and I decide that I want to go work Kitchener, and I say, you know what, I don't have a car, Dale, can you just drive me? And I don't have a credit card or ID, so can you just rent the room? And I'm having problems uploading my pictures, can you just help me with this? And I'm fully active participant in this. You're not forcing me, you're not beating me, you're not starving me, you don't have a gun in my head, you're not making me do anything, but I'm asking you for help like this. If the police come around and I say, oh yeah, he did all of these things for me, you can be charged with human trafficking.
Jesus Christ.
And you saying, Jordana asked me to do these things, she consented to it, she was a willing participant in all of this, is not a defense.
Oh wow.
Is that fair? Is that something
I don't
that
think
needs to
it's
be
fair.
worked on? Like,
I don't think it's fair at all. I don't think it's right. I don't think the regime is right. And the new law is now, after Guillaume Gomeshi's case, I'm sure you remember that big sex assault case
yes.
in Toronto, the court system and politicians went ballistic and they set up a whole new regime around sex assault, which is also encapsulated to some degree by human trafficking. The courts are trying to parse it out a little bit, but it's more of an academic exercise. But now, if, for example, you've got a girl that has been working as a prostitute before you, claims otherwise, but you have proof that she was a prostitute before you, and you're charged with procuring her, which means introducing her into sex trafficking, into the world of sex work. Your lawyer has to vet all of their questions and ask permission of the court to question any of her prior instances of having been a working girl in order to defend yourself.
Thank God.
Like they've set up these guard
Yeah, the
systems
boundaries, yeah.
that are making it so difficult to defend these cases in a way that I think is totally unfair, and it does a disservice to the system. If the system is about finding justice and getting to the truth, then we're really preventing, the judge or the jury from having an understanding of the full context within which this relationship is happening.
Yeah, even with my situation, like there was so much stuff that, and I was never like a guy that was in and out of the court systems or been in any of this, and there was so much stuff that I felt like I was mistreated with. But who do you talk to? Who do you go to and ask, hey, is this fair? Should they be doing this? And I felt like, well, I know I was dealt with a pretty shitty hand, but it's like these are reasons why we want to talk to people like you, is for other people to know and have these information that's not out there.
Yeah, I can tell you, like amongst criminal defense lawyers, we're frustrated. We're frustrated with like I don't take on sex assault cases, and I've really stopped taking on human trafficking cases, but I still read about them all of the time and see all of these, progressions that are happening within the system, and it's frustrating. It's we're sort of handcuffed in the defense that we can run for people, and it's not right. If we're supposed to be fighting against the state whose resources are endless. Like the one thing that we had was that element of surprise, that element of putting a witness or a complainant to the truth by testing that truth by, through vigorous cross-examination. And we don't have that anymore. We now have to vet everything, which means not only does the Crown have access to all the types of questions we're going to be asking, but now these alleged victims are able to hire their own lawyer and argue whether or not their rights are going to be violated in the type of questions the defense can ask.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Now, I have a question, and it may seem silly, but say like I met someone maybe in like, I don't know, Atlanta or Chicago or whatever, and I procure her and say like, hey, let me fly you out, what I'm saying, to come here so we can whatever. Is that, and she's also in, say she's in the world of OF or whatever, is that sex trafficking as well, or is that human trafficking as well?
I mean, it depends what you're saying, because you're sort of saying if I fly her here for whatever. So the whatever
Okay,
if
doesn't
you fly
matter,
here in the sense for
right?
sex.
Like, are
yes,
you
if
flying here and you've got like a place set up for her to work out of, and
no, I'm flying here for me. Like we're gonna get busy. You know what I'm saying? I'm paying for her to come. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna get down to the and then whatever. Is that still considered?
As long as she's of age. If you're not selling her to other people and you're not advertising her services for other people's use, like you meet a girl in Atlanta, you're just interested in sleeping with her and you want to fly her here for the purpose of you spending time with her.
Mm-hmm.
No, you haven't done, by Canadian laws, you haven't done anything wrong.
Okay.
Good. But if you say to your buddy, listen, I got this girl coming and I'm going to spend a couple days with her, but I'm going to fly her here for a week. And, maybe you want to spend some time with her and it's going to cost you like, whatever, $1,000 an hour because from Atlanta and you got to cover your costs. That's a different story. That's advertising sexual services and material benefit. And there's a whole list of human trafficking related charges that go with that. And if you put her ads up, then you're advertising sexual services, which is also illegal here.
Okay. I get it now. That's good.
How much more time do we have?
Comes here. So if you fly her here and she says to you when she gets here, listen, there's a lot going on here. I'm gonna go work and I'm gonna pay you because I'm gonna stay with you and you're gonna feed me and you've flown me over here, and she gives you some of that money, you've now secured a material benefit from sexual services, which is also illegal. So there's like a whole host of illegality around this, and everything is fact specific, which is why like you gotta flesh it out a little bit, but it's really crazy. And that's part of the problem, right? How's a guy supposed to know what they can and cannot do in these circumstances if the law is so confusing around this issue?
Exactly. We got 7 minutes.
7 minutes. Well, last question from my side. Rap lyrics being used in the courts, that's been the biggest thing for the last couple of years. We have a few of our artists. I believe Jay Noble was one of them. One of the first one was Heartless G, I believe. What's your
RC.
take on that? Like rappers, lyrics being used in court?
It's awful. I think it's you know, I've been listening to hip hop since I was a kid, like 7, 8 years old. I started playing basketball. And like I'll date myself right now. I'm 45 years old. So I was getting like cassette tapes with like Eazy-E and NWA
Hey,
on the basketball courts. And that was like my introduction to hip hop. And so I've been listening to, you know, quote unquote gangster rap, but like very violent rap for a very long time. And we all know that, you know, 95% of what we hear on hip hop lyrics is not a verbatim account of what's transpired. It may be what someone is exposed to, but it's an artistic expression of a life lived in certain, you know, locations in certain communities. And so to use that against someone ignores the entire artistic expression of what's happening, the fact that it is a creative outlet for most people, as opposed to being an autobiography. And so I think it's horrific. And I think that it's something that's only happening in hip hop. There's very few, you know, heavy metal artists that are being prosecuted, even though they're often, you know, very violent in the way that they're expressing themselves. Um, you know, we don't hear about country artists being convicted on the basis of their lyrics, even though there's some lyrics that are questionable. So I think it's horrific. I think it is obviously disproportionately affecting Black men from, you know, racialized, impoverished communities who are trying to use hip hop as a means of not only escaping their day-to-day life, but also potentially for finance. And so you've got, you know, young men who are trying to garner a skill and do so sometimes very successfully being shut down. Courts are starting to take a stance against it. I'm sure we all saw what happened with Top Five. His lawyer did an amazing job keeping his, I don't know if it was rap lyrics or just Instagram posts, but there was social media that was the Crown was attempting to use against him, and the judge put his foot down and said, I'm not doing that here." And then we see, you know, people like Lamar Skeet who are serving 25 to life on the basis of rap lyrics that were not only used against him improperly, but completely misinterpreted. You know, what he was saying in those lyrics was not what the Crown was trying to use them for. And he was speaking out about, you know, rats at the Don jail that were you know, whatever, snitching on people, and the Crown tried to use that as as to attempt to say that he had, you know, killed the person he was accused of killing. And
wow.
so it completely took the lyrics themselves out of context, let alone the fact that they were written while he was in custody, and ignoring, you know, the timeline of where this came from. And he was just, you know, at his worst. He was frustrated, he was angry, and was turning to something that was seen as a creative, positive medium.
That is crazy.
Is there a Toronto hip hop police like how there was in New York? I know you're from our era. So in New York, there was a hip hop Toronto. There was a hip hop police back then. Is there some sort of hip hop division in Toronto? Because a lot of times the police out here they're stopping shows. They're doing the most. A lot of rappers are getting raids and stuff like that. Is there a specific target on Toronto artists?
So I don't think that there's a specific Toronto division that just focuses on hip hop artists, but there's certainly, you know, the Guns and Gangs unit spends a lot of time involved with, there's tech crimes divisions that also spend time on Instagram and on YouTube. And a lot of Toronto artists, you know, they're caught, right? They're caught in this middle ground between being creative and just being artists and talking about what they see, and deeply involving themselves, you know, in sort of criminal subcultures. And so if they're, you know, posting videos of themselves with guns and money and drugs, and they're sharing that on social media and making it public and accessible, which they have to do in order to get hits, in order for their songs to actually sell and make money off of, right? Just following the ordinary course of the music industry, then they are, of course, exposing themselves to police who are trolling these sites to see who's posting what in their songs, in their lyrics, and trying to connect that to ongoing criminal investigations. You know, don't forget, a lot of these investigations and a lot of these raids, the underpinnings of that are confidential informants. And so when you have people in hip hop culture that are telling police, oh, this rapper is involved in selling fentanyl, this rapper is involved, you know, in selling guns, this rapper carries a gun, and he may carry a gun for his own protection, but if someone in his circle knows that and gets arrested and gives that information to police, the police are now going to look at who he is, what he's doing, what he's putting out on the internet, and who he's involved with. And he may tangentially involve all of the people in his circle by nature, of the videos that he's putting out. So that's sort of the way that the police are sort of circling the drain around this. Are they focused on hip hop as opposed to other music and other musical genres? I imagine so, yes. But I think part of that is because people are putting so much, prime into their music videos because that's what sells. And it's not necessarily what they're doing, but it's what people are buying. And so they're caught in this sort of trap of, I want to create music that people will purchase and listen to and make me, money and put me on a global stage. And the only way to do that from a local level is to put out what people are buying. And what people are buying is getting them in trouble.
Jordana, thank you so much. Really quick, can you let the
So,
people know how to get a hold of you, all your platforms, everything that you got going on?
absolutely. So I'm the owner of JHG Criminal Law. My website is jhgcriminallaw.com. You can find me on all social media just by my name, Jordana Goldlist. So Instagram, I don't really check TikTok as much, but if you send me a DM on Instagram, I'll get back to you. If you're looking for my phone number, email address, or send me a web inquiry, all of that can happen through my website, and all of my social media links are linked there.
Perfect.
And I might need you for some new appeal lawyers, maybe.
I have if it's something that I don't do, I have a network of really great lawyers that can help. So
Yeah.
I don't do appeals, but I'm more than happy to put you in touch with the right people.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your time.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Thanks for having me on
weekend.
the show.
All right. And see, if you ever need help with your stuff, just let us know, and we'll help you with your podcast. Anything.
Yeah, we'll help you edit, whatever.
Anything you need.
Amazing. Amazing. You guys are great. Thank you so
All right.
much.
Thank you, Jordana.
Enjoy
Have
the
a good one.
weekend. Talk to you soon.
All right.